Hi, fifth graders. This video is all about finding simplest form. And a lot of times fifth graders tell me that they get really tripped up when they're trying to do simplest form questions. But really, simplest form is just another way of finding an equivalent fraction. Instead of using multiplication, we use division. And what's important to remember is that when we find the simplest form of a fraction, it means we're trying to find the way that we can represent that amount using the fewest number of pieces. So, for example, I have models here showing 8/12, 4/6, and finally 2/3. The 2/3 tells me it's in simplest form. And that model shows simplest form because the numerator and the denominator have no more factors in common. I've showed the same amount of that circle being shaded in with the fewest number of pieces possible. So let's take a look at how we would do this. For example, let's look at the fraction 9/12. So I have 9 different 1/12 sized tiles on my paper in front of me. Now the first thing I need to do is I need to list all the factors of both the numerator and the denominator. And remember, the factors are the numbers that we would multiply together in order to get the numerator or the denominator. So the factors of 9 are 1, 3, and 9, because I could multiply 1 times 9 or 3 times 3. And then the factors of 12 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12, because I could multiply 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or 3 times 4 to get 12. Now that I've listed out my factors, I need to find the greatest factor they have in common. In other words, I need to look at my two lists and find the biggest number that both lists share. In this particular fraction, I can see that both the numerator and the denominator share a factor of 3. So that's going to be my greatest common factor. Finally, I'll divide both parts of the fraction by that factor. So if I take 9/12, I know I'm making a brand new fraction, and I'm doing that by dividing. So I need to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 3. Since 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 12 divided by 3 is 4, that means that 9/12 in simplest form is 3/4. And if I'm showing this with fraction tiles, that means I'll be able to line up 3 1/4 tiles on top of the 9 1/12 tiles to come up with the exact same amount. Let's take a look at some more practice questions of simplest form together. Okay, so you'll hear me say it over and over, but remember, simplest form is just another way of finding an equivalent fraction. Instead of multiplying, though, we're dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same number. And I always suggest using these 3 numbers first. Ask yourself, can you divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, 3, or 5? Most of the time, in examples that you'll see, you'll be able to divide by 2, 3, or 5, or some combination of those. So let's take a look and use that strategy as well as the greatest common factor strategy to show you how to do this. So in the numbers 3 and 6, or my fraction 3/6, can I divide by 2? Well, I can divide 6 by 2, but I can't divide 3 by 2 evenly. So I would move on to my next check. Can I divide 3 and 6 both by 3? 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that means I can divide both of these numbers by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that gives me 1/2 in simplest form. Now I need to look at this particular fraction and say, can I divide both of those numbers by 2, 3, and 5? And a big hint is that whenever your numerator is 1, you are in simplest form. So to prove that I made an equivalent fraction, I'm going to set up 3/6 tiles. And since we found that to be equal to 1/2, if I line up my 1/2 tile underneath it, it should be exactly the same, which it is. So 3/6 is equal to 1/2. Now, if I were to use the greatest common factor strategy, that means I'm going to list out my factors of 3. In order to get 3, there's only one set of numbers I can multiply together, 1 and 3. But to get 6, I could multiply 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. So now when I look at both lists, the number 3 is the biggest number that both lists have in common. So that is another way of checking how to put that number in simplest form. Let's take a look at 9 and 15. Can I divide them both by 2? No, because they're both odd numbers, so that would not divide evenly by 2. Can I divide them both by 3? Well, 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So let's check that. So if I divide by 3, divide by 3, I end up with 3/5. Now I need to look at this fraction and go through those same 3 digits. Can I divide 3 and 5 by 2 evenly? No. Can I divide them both by 3 evenly? Well, I can divide 3 by 3, but not 5, so I need to move on. Can I divide them both by 5? Well, I can divide 5 by 5, but not 3. So that tells me 3/5 is in simplest form. Now, if I list out the factors of 9 are 1 times 9 or 3 times 3. So I have 3 factors, 1, 3, and 9. And with 15, I have 1 times 15 or 3 times 5. Again, 3 is the only number that shows up on both lists. So when I divided by 3, that gave me simplest form. What about 14/20? This time, I can divide them both evenly by 2. So 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So that gives me 7/10. I can't divide 7 and 10 both by 2. I can't divide 7 and 10 both by 3. And I can't divide 7 and 10 both by 5. I could divide 10 by 2 or 5, but not the 7. So that tells me 7/10 is in simplest form. And if I check my factors, to get 14, I need to multiply 1 times 14 or 2 times 7. And to get 20, I need to multiply 1 times 20, 2 times 10, or 4 times 5. So now when I'm looking on those lists, even though I have quite a few more factors, I only have one digit in common, other than the 1, of course, and that's the 2. All right, let's look at one more example. This time I have 8/12. 8 and 12 can both be divided by 2. So when I divide 8 by 2 and 12 by 2, I end up with 4/6. Now, when I look at 4/6, I recognize that I'm not done yet because I can divide both 4 and 6 by 2 again. So that means sometimes if I'm using this strategy, I might need to take more than one step. When I divide 4 by 2, I get 2, and 6 by 2, I get 3, which is in simplest form. Now you might have recognized that 8 and 12 both share a common factor of 4. And if you think about it, we used 2 groups here and 2 groups here for a total of 4 groups. If you used the factor strategy, you would have come up with that and would have been able to go from 8/12 to 2/3 in one step. It does not matter if you move in one step or in 2 like we did here. So let me show you how that would look. So I would have 1 times 8 and 2 times 4, and then 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. So that's where we would have seen the 2 on both lists, but we also would have recognized that we had the digit 4 on both lists as well. So you could have used either of those to to divide and get your simplest form answer. So that's a little refresher on some simplest form examples. Be on the lookout for if your question is asking for you to put your final answer in simplest form, and try that check of can I divide by 2, 3, or 5, or use that factor strategy to help you solve. Thanks for watching.